First of all, in your words, what does a circuit judge do?
A circuit judge, um, from the perspective of hearing cases, listens to both sides with the law in mind and rules on the issues in front of him or her. That's what a circuit judge, in its broadest sense, does.
Okay. What are the primary kinds of cases that you'll hear as a circuit judge?
Each circuit judge seems to hear different kinds of cases.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Circuit judges are quote unquote a notch above, or in seniority type of scenario, are the ones that are able to decide which cases they hear, versus an associate doesn't get that same level of managerial discretion or something of that nature. Meaning that usually, once or twice a year, on occasion, there will be some, maybe even more often, there is a meeting, as I understand it, between the circuit judges as to figuring out who will handle what types of cases for that year or for that time period. Um, some judges deal strictly with criminal stuff, but then are backups in the event that another judge who's hearing a civil matter might be out sick or something. They might have to hear those type of things as well on that particular day. Um, so, in my estimation, it could be anything from A to Z, adoptions to zoning. But until you're there, you don't really necessarily know what type of cases you're going to hear. My guess is a circuit judge who wins this election will probably be started out in um, traffic, hearing traffic cases, as well as hearing like orders of protection and things of that nature. But that's just my gut response, because um, I think that's how that's occurred in the past.
Okay. And as circuit judge, would you be in charge of appointing associate judges?
I would be one of the four that would be hearing interviews and appointing associate judges. I would have a vote,
Okay.
as I understand it.
Okay. And so it comes down to a vote between you and three other circuit judges?
Correct.
Okay. Right. So why are you running for circuit judge in the Sixth Circuit instead of running as an appellate judge, continuing to be a lawyer, or seeking an appointment as an associate judge?
It's a big question with numerous components there, isn't it? I am running for judge. Number one, because I've wanted to be a judge for a while. I've been looking at um, this possibility for a little bit, and just by sheer luck, Tom Little decided he was going to retire, and I thought I would throw my hat in the ring. But this is the community I grew up in. This is the community I went to college in. This is the community I came back to, and decided I would grow my family and grow my business, and it's a community that I love. So that at its essence is why I'm running. Um, I don't have um, as for being an appellate judge or running for uh, that type of position, I don't have the desire to do that. Number one. Number two, the logistics of that, it covers, as I understand the new district, because it's recently changed. It covers pretty much Macon County, going east and west, almost to the state lines, and all the way down to the tip of Illinois, the southern part of Illinois. So logistically, to me, that's just I want to be a dad. I want to be a husband. I don't want to be. I'm already away from my family enough the way it is. So logistically, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Okay.
So
Do you think you might be interested in an appellate judgeship in the future?
well, I never rule anything out, but at the same point in time, I don't feel that that's where my heart lies at the moment. That's
Okay.
for sure.
Okay. Um, Christy Jankowski with WCIA reports that Judge Thomas Little mostly presided over drug court cases, family court cases, and other civil matters, and that he found the most rewarding part of the job was helping children. Um, I mean, you already talked a little bit about expecting some like more of the traffic court
Right.
early on. Would you end up being in charge of which kind of cases you hear, as far as whether you take the drug court cases or?
I guess let's put it this way, as I understand, and I've never been a judge before, so with that caveat, I understand that circuit court judges uh, would get together and make kind of dole out or figure out who's going to hear what types of cases. Um, I guess at some point in time, I would anticipate that I might be able to choose a little bit more of what I would be hearing, but off the bat, I'm going to just plug whatever holes there are in my estimation.
Okay, so you'll kind of take some guidance from the other three circuit judges.
I think well, in my estimation, Macon County as a whole has a finite number of cases.
Mm-hmm.
If my strengths lend to some areas of those cases that maybe other judges don't have, then I'm happy to be a team player and work alongside them.
Okay.
I guess is kind of what I'm saying.
Right. So um, what is your expertise in law?
So, I guess if I had to break down my practice, I don't necessarily know that I will call myself expertise in lots of areas of law, but I would say that I have more experience in other areas than some. I would say that I'm a general practitioner, so that means I do a little bit of everything. However, there are some things I know I just don't. I just won't do just because maybe I don't have the medical expertise, like for a medical malpractice case.
Mm-hmm.
Usually you rely heavily upon a doctor, and if some of those lawyers that do that type of thing have some medical background,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't pretend to know that. I'm not opposed to learning it, but at the same point in time, I don't pretend to have a great deal of expertise in that area.
Okay.
Um,
Are you well versed in the drug court, family court, and other civil matters?
I was getting ready to go there. So if I had to put a percentage on kind of my areas of practice, I would say there's probably about 30% of my practice that is maybe 30% is just a tad high, but it's almost 30% maybe um, of decedents' estates and guardianships. Um, about another third is family law. Um, I have probably a good 20% of my practice um, being sorry, I lost my train of thought. Municipal law.
Mm-hmm.
I have three municipalities and one fire district I represent. Um, and I would say probably 10% or so is my I have some criminal defense work that I do. So criminal defense, of course, is where that drug court component comes in. I have some experience with that, and yeah. So I think I would be able to, if that was the hole that needed to be filled and I needed to step into, I feel comfortable doing so.
Okay. Um, what aspect of being a circuit judge are you most excited about?
I think the excitement for me would be coming from the perspective of sitting up there, listening to both sides, and making sure that I've heard both sides, making sure that the process is fair, that people felt like they got their day in court, that um, they weren't interrupted when they were talking, so long as they're being civil, but they were listened to. They might not have got what they wanted or everything they asked for, but they know that it was a fair process, and that's the part that I think excites me the most.
All right, thank you. See, do you follow the judicial philosophy of constitutional originalism, living constitution, or something else?
I can't say that I've subscribed to either one of them like strictly. When I've read through some of them and talked about them and read through opinions, I see kind of both sides of it, and there are times that I find myself more inclined to one over the other, and other times I find myself kind of reversing that kind of notion. So it's a difficult question. I'm not quite sure that I could say I find myself in one camp or the other.
Okay. It's my understanding that Dobbs v. Jackson was decided with a lens of constitutional originalism. Well, would you agree with that, and do you agree with Dobbs' decision?
Tell me what Dobbs' decision was.
The one that overturned Roe v. Wade?
Oh, okay. Do I agree with Dobbs' decision? I have to say that because I've been in the midst of a campaign for the last 8 months, I have not read Dobbs v. Jackson, but I could tell you that generally, the court itself has taken a position on this, and I have some concerns about the rights of women, and where this will lead, to a patchwork of states that have the ability to maintain the health of women, and other states that don't have a path to maintain the health of women. And I have some serious concerns about that. I don't necessarily know that the path that's going down is the right path.
Do you believe, now I know you haven't had a chance to read it, but do you believe that there is anything in the Illinois or U.S. Constitution that would invalidate the 2019 law that protects abortion rights in Illinois?
I would have to say that I don't know the answer to that. I've not researched that at all. Okay. But I'd be happy to at some point in time, if time allows to do that, or if it comes in front of me, that's the due diligence that is required to spend the time to look through that and analyze those things.
Okay. So I understand you have practiced law in Decatur since 2009 and are currently with Johnson, Chiligaris, and Weatherford.
Right.
So are you a partner in ownership of the firm?
Yes.
Okay. Will your name remain on the firm if you are elected judge?
It's a good question. Nothing I've ever considered. And it would just really kind of depend on whoever I could reach a deal with, as far as, or that I felt comfortable and could reach a deal with, that might be able to take over my side of the firm. But as far as my name being on the firm, to me it's immaterial. It's a name. It's not.
Okay. How will you manage conflicts of interest when ruling on cases that your current partners and colleagues bring before you?
The Judicial Code requires us to recuse ourselves any point in time when, and I can't remember the specifics. I'd have to read the rule again, but there is a rule in the Judicial Code that advises how to deal with that type of conflict. My recollection is you can't hear cases from your prior firm,
Mhm.
or those that you've been in business with. Now there very well might be a time frame on that. There
Mhm.
might not be. I don't remember off the top of my head.
Okay.
So obviously I'd follow that rule.
Right, of course. So your website says that you believe, quote, our society is experiencing a crisis of values. What did you mean by that?
Thank you for that question. In my estimation, we have people in society currently that are really floundering, um, making decisions that aren't um, whether you're religious or not, or have a certain code of morals that you live by, whether religious or not.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel that too much of what we're seeing right now is so divisive, so you're either with me or against me type of mentality that is such a concern. We have people that, maybe when that, in the generations that were older than us, that would have disputes, but they would have disputes with their hands,
Mm-hmm.
maybe, or their words.
Mm-hmm.
Today we have people that grab guns and feel like they've got to protect themselves, or one up the other person. And I just don't understand that mentality. I don't understand that to me, those values of life is a precious thing.
Mm-hmm.
That you and I sitting here is an interactive moment that, we'll have shared, at some point in time, once we've completed. But people are just sometimes so short-sighted, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And in my estimation, valuing that life, valuing the moments that we have, um, I just think that's been lost. The fact that, even though Democrats believe one thing and Republicans believe another, there, in my estimation, is probably 40-50% of society, is my theory, that is kind of somewhere in the middle, that go, okay, I agree with Democrats on this point, I agree with Republicans on this point. And I don't think I think those are the values, the value of compromise, and figuring a path forward, that you might not have gotten everything you wanted, but you can still move forward and still be reasonably pleased with the result and the process.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're missing that right now.
Okay. So you're running for Republican Judge Thomas Little's vacancy.
Mm-hmm.
If
Yes.
he had not retired, would you be running this year?
No, because there would be no open seat.
Oh, okay. Are there any decisions of Little's that you have disagreed with or would have handled differently?
It's a good question. I can't honestly think of one at the moment. I'm sure that there were times that I did, but off the top of my head, no, I can't think of anyone in particular.
Okay.
So
Republican Shane Mendenhall, sorry, Republican Shane Mendenhall is running against you.
Yes.
You have identified as my computer went to sleep. Very inconvenient. Okay, you have identified as a moderate Democrat and took a Republican ballot in the primaries, which you said you did because there were no Democrats running in several races locally. You said on Byers & Co. that you wanted to run as an independent to avoid the political aspects, but didn't because it requires 5 times as many signatures. So, why do you think judicial races are partisan?
I think the political parties have a lot of control over um, the legislature, and they've decided to engage in and require certain things to be public, or excuse me, not public but partisan.
Okay.
Um,
Do you
that's
think
my
there?
take on it. I've not researched that at all, but that's just my
Okay.
view.
Do you think there are any benefits to it being an elected position?
Oh, I think there's definitely a benefit to being elected. I think the people should choose in
Mm-hmm.
some fashion, and that's what all the circuit judges, all the four circuit judges, are all elected.
Mm-hmm.
The associate judges are the ones that are appointed. So I completely agree that there needs to be some component of the judicial system that's elected.
Okay.
What I have some frustration with, I guess I'll say, is in our system of government, though the political parties um, have have gotten their teeth on some of these types of positions that, in my estimation, there's no Democrat law or no Republican law. There's just the law.
Mm-hmm.
There's no Democrat law or Republican law that needs to be enforced. It's just the law that needs to be enforced. So in my estimation, the judges, the sheriffs, the coroners. I mean, I would hope that partisanship really doesn't. I can't imagine a way a partisanship really should affect that job as to how it's being done.
Mm-hmm.
I think that just leads to a society that has even fewer values than what we currently have at times.
Okay. So why did you choose to run as a Democrat and not a Republican?
Well, I chose to run as a Democrat because I identify with more Democrat ideas than I do with Republican ideas.
Okay.
And um, so I guess what I'm saying is with that I'm talking about running as an independent, but I'm clearly running as a Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
I get that doesn't necessarily match up, but the point is, excuse me, the point is that it's a situation where I don't think there should be partisanship, but if there's going to be partisanship, I clearly identify with one party over the other,
Okay.
and that's why I chose to be running as a Democrat. But at the same point in time, I'll tell Democrats, well, I want to make sure the budget is balanced. I don't agree with having an unbalanced budget, type of thing. So fiscally, I'm conservative, but when it comes to maybe climate and other things, I tend to be more Democrat, about those social issues.
Okay.
So
Um, can you see any ways that a moderate Democrat might execute the office differently from a Republican or a progressive or farther left Democrat?
I think I'm sure that there probably is, but I can't say that anything comes to mind uh, as specifically about that. I guess where I go with that question in my own mind is a little bit more about you know anytime anytime whether you're on the I'll just use the extremes for just a minute as an example. If you're on the far left or you're the far right on something, I wonder though how much you're willing to listen to the other side
Mm-hmm.
and not have your own filter or lens blocking or accepting things that you already agree with or disagree with, I guess is what I'm saying.
Okay.
So I feel like there's a possibility of that, but I don't. None of us really know
Right.
how that's going to work because nobody's going to ever be in the mind of the judge
Right.
to figure out what's coming in and what's going out and that sort of thing.
Okay. Let's see. Okay. I have a few questions from voters, then I'll circle back to
Sure.
some of my other questions if we have time.
Sure.
Somebody asked me to ask you if do you have any debts?
Do I have any debts?
Mm-hmm.
As far as monetary debts, I'm assuming.
I would believe so.
Okay. I'm sure that I do. I have probably a mortgage, and I know I have a mortgage, and yes,
Okay.
yes, I have debts.
Okay. Do you have any pending litigation against you?
No.
What is your?
Let me clarify that though too. My name might be attached to litigation,
Yeah.
but I also serve as the Macon County Public Administrator and Public Guardian.
Okay.
So sometimes in those sort of situations where somebody has passed away and their loved one did not have anyone to take care of their estate,
Mm-hmm.
I get appointed to help facilitate that estate and wind it down and liquidate it and that sort of thing. So it's possible my name is involved with litigation, but I'm not really the one
Okay.
being sued or
Right.
anything like that, just to be clear.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
What is your background in immigration law and your understanding of how sentencing can affect a person's immigration status?
Great question. And that comes into play quite a bit. I can't say that I've researched that recently. At one point in time, probably 3 years ago, I was representing someone that issue had kind of come up. It's my understanding that anytime let's see how did that go? Off the cuff here. This is not anything I've researched recently, of course. So don't take it as legal advice. But my recollection of that is anytime a person who is not a citizen of the United States pleads guilty or is convicted of, my recollection of anything as a class 4 felony or higher, it can cause problems for their immigration status. And that's why when that plea is given, or that before that plea is heard, the judge will admonish that any individual doesn't matter whether you look like an immigrant or not. It just the point being, and that probably wasn't phrased very well, but it goes to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
This admonishment that if you are not a citizen of the United States, any plea, leading to a conviction may cause problems for your immigration status. As to how that then works within the immigration law, that's something I've never researched, but I do know enough to know that raises a red flag for anybody attempting to obtain citizenship or stay in the country. It can cause some problems, as I understand it, but that's just a generic thing. It's not anything I've researched.
Okay. What do you know of the relationship between Macon County courts and private prisons, if there are any?
I don't know of any relationship like
Okay.
that.
All right. I'll circle back to my other questions. Judge Mike McHaney ruled Pritzker's COVID mandates unconstitutional in the 4th Judicial Circuit and has said the mandates were tyranny. McHaney said the case was consolidated with other similar cases in Sangamon County. First of all, what do you think of McHaney's ruling?
I've not read McHaney's ruling.
Okay. What do you think of the process of consolidating that case and other cases like it in Sangamon County?
Well, I I don't have I'm not familiar with where that original case was, but if there are cases within the same county, um, I think judicial economy would make sense. In other words, you only having one judge hear those two or three cases that need to be, that could be consolidated, um, so long as it doesn't have, um, I guess what I'm saying is so long as it makes sense to do so, meaning that there's if if these two or three cases have the similar issues or slightly different issues, but within the same vein of the law, then in my estimation that makes sense to have just one judge hear it and hear them all together. But um, because for instance, a lot of times when I'm doing a family case or a divorce case, there might also be an order of protection case that came along with that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times the judge and OPs or orders of protection and family law cases are primarily heard by two different judges.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times one of the attorneys or both will ask that those cases be consolidated so that one judge can hear all of the information and see the bigger picture, so to speak. So in my estimation, that type of thing makes sense, at least on that level. Onto this other issue here that McCaney is talking about, I'm not as familiar with it, so I wouldn't be willing to issue an opinion at this point in time on that.
Understandable. What do you think of legislation regarding cash bail?
What do I think of legislation regarding cash bail?
Specifically, the
provision involving cash bail. I have mixed feelings about it. I applaud Democrats for trying to figure out a way to make the system not so based upon a person's funds.
Mm-hmm.
But I have some real concerns about how we maintain accountability for people who've done crimes,
mm-hmm.
In this situation, and maintain safety while doing so.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a big problem they've tried to tackle there, in this experiment of democracy and criminal justice. Time will tell whether or not they've gotten it right or if it needs to be tweaked. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that yet, but but I would say those are the two things that I see that we've got. I applaud them for taking on that issue that's been an issue for a while, but at the same point in time, we've got to maintain accountability. For people need to be held accountable for their actions, and we need to maintain a civil society. We can't go to a lawless sort of chaos or Wild West.
So it's 8:30 now. Do you have about 5 or so more minutes?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah. Just gonna ask it. What do you have any other strong feelings or thoughts about any other provisions in the Safety Act?
I would say that one thing when I've been reading through it, that's not clear to me yet is whether or not. Let me back up a step. As I understand it, when a person is accused of a crime and arrested, the state's attorney then has 24 to 48 hours to put on file and have a hearing for whether or not that person needs to continue to be detained or not.
Mm-hmm.
In that hearing, as I understand it, the judge will hear arguments about whether or not this individual is a danger to another individual in society, or a danger to society at large.
Mm-hmm.
That, I think, is somewhat typical of a current bond hearing. There's also a component of whether or not the person's going to flee or show up or not show up for that type of thing. But what I haven't seen yet is these two things, as to whether or not a judge can consider whether or not that person who's accused of having committed the crime has been convicted of prior things
Mm-hmm.
that may or may not be in a similar nature as to what he or she's accused of currently,
Mm-hmm.
and whether or not he or she has not shown up for prior court issues, such as, if there was a prior case and they had a warrant issued for their arrest because 15 times because they couldn't show up to their court appearances.
Mm-hmm.
To me, those two things that will help maintain the accountability of that individual and civil society at large, but also will help cut down on the system just kind of chasing its tail, in that we're trying to always find these people who
Mm-hmm.
may have committed these crimes but aren't being detained, and that we're spending a lot of time chasing people rather than maintaining law and order. And I
Mm-hmm.
guess, to me, are those two things that haven't been answered yet, or if they've been answered, I haven't found them yet.
Okay.
So
Are you aware of any racial disparities in sentencing in Macon County, and how will you control for or monitor that?
I can't say that I'm aware of any, um, but there again, my experience right now is not really on a macro level. It's on a micro level
Mm-hmm.
of I represent John Smith, in this particular case, and what he got accused of and what he got convicted of,
Mm-hmm.
fell within this range, and the sentence was in this range.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a good feel for the macro version of, we had 10,000 felony cases this year, and all of them were, the breakdown, the racial
Right.
breakdown of those. I mean, that would be interesting to me to
Mm-hmm.
know, but as I sit here today, I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. So the Illinois State Bar Association Judicial Advisory Poll had 82 respondents for you.
Yeah.
And you received a not recommended rating.
Yes.
Your opponent, Shane Mendenhall, had 73 respondents and also received a not recommended rating.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on the results of this survey of lawyers?
My thoughts on it are that lawyers, my gut says that lawyers were looking for something else, and I think lawyers generally were attempting to go with the status quo, meaning that they wanted the associate judge who had been hearing cases that they were somewhat familiar with. They were more comfortable supporting him,
Okay.
versus taking a chance on other lawyers.
Okay. And you'd said on Byers and Co. that you have a master's degree in political science. So why did you choose to go into law rather than something legislative?
Well, um, going into law was was what I thought would be helpful in wherever I went. I wasn't 100% sure what I would do after getting a law degree, but I knew that I had an interest um, in the political science sphere, but I also had a minor or a concentration there in public administration. So just seeing, like seeing how the city of Decatur works and helping, in that doing government bureaucracy in some regards. But I knew that even if that's the route I went, ultimately, I knew that I would need to have some background in the law, in my estimation, to understand, what the parameters were of a city or a community coming together and figuring out how to address its issues.
Okay.
So I headed to law school after completing that. I was fortunate that my parents had said, "Well, if you want to go, we'll help you with that." So um, I did that, and that's kind of why I did that.
Okay. Yeah. One last question.
1 month.
Okay. How does your political science background contribute to your understanding of the law and contribute to how you will perform your judicial duties?
It's a good question. I think that my political science and public administration background kind of helps me understand a little bit more about what's political, which is not necessarily legal, but what's political, and identifying what's political versus the legal issues. Because the political sometimes is that discourse or that opinion that people want to see happen. It's not necessarily what the law then provides. And so helping identify those differences as to what becomes political or opinion versus what has more basis in the law, I think is very helpful, because you can kind of narrow down and focus on what there is a root in the law and what is just opinion.
Okay.
In my estimation.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Do you have anything else you want to add about your political platform?
I don't know that I really do. I just think that my experience and my integrity, this is what this race should really all be about. It really shouldn't be, in my estimation, like I said before, about partisan politics too much, even though it's filtering in and coming in. So
Okay.
Yep. Thank you, Reed. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Andrew.